Content creator, does that sound stupid?
We're going. I'm a content creator, that's all I say.
Should I say the same?
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell else am I?
You're a content creator.
Yeah. My name is Mike Farr, also known as Silent Mike, and I'm a content creator.
My name is Omar Isuf, and I'm a porn star.
Welcome to the Less Than Obvious podcast. I'm your host, Jim McDonald. This was a late night recording in Columbus, Ohio with my friends Silent Mike Farr and Omar Isuf. Successful YouTubers, especially Omar, partners with Bart Kwan in Kaizen training and now co-hosts of the Mama's Boys podcast. It had been over a year since Mike and I had recorded anything together, and I didn't realize how much I'd missed it. This may or may not be a fair observation, but I walked away from this one thinking that these guys were really kind of two sides of the same coin, both very private, both self-identifying as stubborn, one more of a planner, but both open to opportunities that present themselves. 3 quick notes. 1, this episode is arriving later than I had planned, largely because I was sick last week, and let's face it, I don't have anybody to hand this stuff off to. 2, hopefully by the time this goes up, there will be at least a basic website at lessthanobviouspod.com. That should make it easier to find all the places the show is available. And finally, I have a statement that I wanted to make. It's after the end of the episode, past the preview. You can decide to listen to it or not. It's up to you. Anyway, let's jump into the conversation.
Yeah, I'm ready. More serious tone, yeah?
More serious tone.
Yeah,
just a little, you know.
Yeah, we're in
just
it.
A little, okay.
No,
We're in it.
do not interrupt Mr. McDonald, Mike.
So we're going to do this one in a group format since all of us are here. So the primary question of my podcast is this. Has there been a time in your life when you made a decision that was really unclear to everybody else why you were taking that path? And there may be more than one. So what was the thought process that went into that? What did you think about in terms of pros and cons in making that decision? And then what was the outcome? Whoever wants to go first.
I have like 3, I think.
Go big down.
You want all 3 or pieces of them?
Do they have anything in common? I don't care. Let's go.
I don't know. I think the first one that maybe pops in my head is high school decision leaving. I've talked about it a little bit in my past, and probably even to you, Jim, where my ego was really bad at that point. I was a pretty good basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of confidence, ended up in statistics and rankings where I was top 3 in the nation in a lot of categories. Good. Went to a small school, so you don't get the respect perhaps from colleges and
right.
where you're going to end up. Pretty good student. I don't know, my GPA is 3.6 or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't a dumb kid. I worked hard in both sports, but 1, because of my ego, 2, because of my fear of failure. I was too scared to walk on or try to prove myself again at a big college, because those are the only really opportunities I had. So in a weird way, now looking back, it made 0 sense, but my sense was go to junior college, even though everyone probably from the outside it made no sense, because I could have played D3, I could have played D2, I could have walked on and played D1, and for some reason I went to junior college an hour away from home. Well, when you talk about it, you're like, Mike, that makes 0 sense, and I don't know what my thought process was because I was 18. I think in my head, like all my friends were leaving, so I wanted somewhat of a new life. I didn't want to go to the junior college in the neighborhood. 2, I wanted to, if I was going to prove myself, I wanted to do like a real FU prove myself rather than walk on at the D1 and be okay on that team. I was like, well, I'll go the gangster route in junior college, and then a college is going to want me. I guess like every human, I just want to be wanted. And so these colleges are like, well, you could come and walk on. I'm like, that's not being wanted. Where a junior college said, yeah, we want you. I'm like, all right, I'll go this guy, run this guy's world, then Duke's going to call me. Not really. I was more realistic than that. But I knew maybe some bigger school would come and want me. And from the outside, I don't know what people thought per se. Old Mike, now Mike, decade later, looks back on that, and it doesn't make sense, as I just explained it. Luckily, I was young, so your mistakes have less repercussions often when you're young.
Right.
Because the ripples are smaller.
Right.
2, my parents were insanely supportive, which also lessened the ripples, because no matter how I messed up, you got to back up.
So there was no point where they were saying, Mike, what are you doing?
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't know. As I get older, everyone's like, yeah, you're starting to see flaws in humans and stuff. Like, man, I had really good parents. Like, like they knew maybe, I don't know if you believe in destiny or the Lord above or who you believe in. I don't know who I believe in, but I knew I was going to be okay. And so then maybe my mom and dad just knew, like, yeah, figure it out. Like, he's not an idiot. He works hard. He'll find a way. Going to a junior college an hour away in a less privileged area than he already is in doesn't make sense, but we're going to let him go. And then in my head, I justified it because it was cheap.
Yeah.
I could have gone to a private school and whatever that cost, $100,000 a year or something. I was paying $500 a semester. And so that was a mini one in my life. We'll get into a deeper one. Lead the way, Omar.
Yeah, if we were going to talk about school, I would say one of the moments that probably didn't make sense to most people on the outside was when I left the University of Windsor that I was going to. So I first went to that school. I had a full scholarship. Also with the OSAP, which are student loans, they were basically paying me to go to school where I didn't have to pay them back. I was staying with my aunt, so I got to go to school and I basically got paid for it. I was at first doing a degree in business. I later upgraded to business economics. I kept my scholarship, and the final semester there, I had like a perfect grade point average. But I just was done with school. Like after 2 years, I did not want to keep going. And so by all intents and purposes, it would seem on the outside, like you just complete 2 more years, so you do 4 years total, and you get your degree. I'm not paying anything. I'm actually making a little bit of money, especially because I was working at the university as a trainer. And I'm living with my aunt, so I just got free cash. It's like a pretty sweet setup. But I'm just that type of person. If I don't want to do something, I'm just not going to do it, and I'm incredibly stubborn. So I made that choice already when I first went to school. And I would say this, even the concept of, post-secondary education, going to university didn't really entice me from the get-go. If I wanted to go for something for myself, it would be more like physics. I talked about that before, like astrophysics, something I'm passionate about. But that would take a decade to get an actual degree that I'd want, like a PhD or something like that. So I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, but I did try and go for the safe route because I know my parents, my mom, definitely wanted me to go to university, so I wanted to follow through with that. I had the grades, so I tried it out. I did it for the first year. I met some friends. I left the city I was in and went to Windsor from Toronto. And I did, enjoy it somewhat, but just a large part of me felt I was missing out on a lot of life, that I just did not enjoy being there, and I did not enjoy doing something I wasn't passionate about or didn't enjoy at all.
So it wasn't so much the school itself, it was school itself. It wasn't that school, it was...
Yeah, if I went to another university, it probably would have been a same a situation. I just hate the concept, and I think this is something that's a part of me where I feel like I'm wasting time doing something that I don't want to do. And so, for a lot of people, 4 years doesn't seem like a lot of time, especially when you're young. But for me, it seemed like forever. And especially, and I would say maybe the part that made more sense in my brain, and then later on it's made a lot more sense, is the fact that at the university, like I said, I was training people. I was a personal trainer. And so a lot of the people were college professors, were working professionals. And most of those individuals, when I was training them, and as you know, when you're training, you're kind of like a rent-a-friend situation, they would talk about how miserable they were working their professional jobs. So basically, hypothetically, where I'd see myself in the future, some of those positions, some business type individuals or lawyers or any of those jobs that are deemed good, a lot of these people were kind of fractured and broken. And I just thought to myself, is this, really what I want to do, or can I afford to take some time away? And, the opportunity cost, I have to give a quick shout out to Nassim Taleb, which would be Fooled by Randomness is one of his books, and then Black Swan. And then another one actually is Seth Godin, who's a marketer who I think just recently launched a podcast. He has that book called The Dip, which is basically, once again, that opportunity cost, where sometimes we're so into doing something where we think, we have a scholarship, therefore we must go, that we just become set in our ways. And for me, I've always been able to, if I just don't want to do something or I don't see that path for me, despite it being alluring to other people on the outside or it doesn't make sense, to me it makes a lot of sense. And then following what I want to do usually pays off a lot better.
For the sake of clarity, the book that Omar is talking about is The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb, which bears no relationship at all to the movie Black Swan, which stars Natalie Portman as a ballerina who thinks she's becoming the Black Swan in Swan Lake. If you like that movie, look up the connection between it and the Mickey Rourke film The Wrestler. It'll blow your mind. Anyway, the book is about events that are highly improbable. You might even say less than obvious. Apropos of this discussion, I would say that from the point of view of the early 2000s, what YouTube and social media have become by 2018 would have seemed highly improbable. But more on that later.
So you don't have anything against education. Your problem is school.
Yeah, just for that degree, like for the business degree that I was getting, especially Black Swan is a terrible book to read if you're going to business school, because when he gets into some of the economic theory, and especially if you look at statistics or some mathematical models, a lot of what you learn isn't really super useful. Yeah, when we talk about accounting, yeah, keeping your books. Mm-hmm. But I would say the vast majority of the business degree itself, I could have learned on my own if I wanted to. And I didn't even endeavor at that point when people say, oh, business degree, it's like, well, what, do I want to work for some sort of corporation? I always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit within me, so I would have seen myself in some way doing some sort of business, and I don't think, maybe, it'd be different at another university, but at least from what I saw in those 2 years, I haven't really applied too much of what I've learned in any business I've started.
I've actually said this in a previous episode that you wouldn't have known about, but the thing about a business education is that the bachelor's years really don't provide a whole lot for you.
Yeah.
You take some time and you work in the real world and you go back and get a master's degree.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, now I see these patterns. Now I understand how this works. And I bet you if you actually even now, if you looked back at the curriculum that you were being taught in that degree, you will go, okay, yeah, now I actually get that stuff. I understand. And it's useful, but it's not immediately useful. And you don't really understand it until you see it in the wild.
Sure.
That's just my feeling about it. I didn't feel like I got that much out of my business bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
With the master's, I went back and was like, oh, there's all this theory that describes this that we see in the real world. If you haven't seen it, it's just completely esoteric. It's so theoretical that you can't root yourself to it in any way, I guess.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, for myself, at that point in time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I knew that the people that I saw in the jobs that were deemed good, that I hypothetically saw myself in the future doing, they didn't seem like they were having a good time. So I thought, you know what, let me just take a little bit of time. So I did some bartending and whatnot after I left the school, just to try and figure out what I wanted to do.
So what did people say to you when you decided to leave?
Oh, they thought it was a terrible idea. Like, my mom was just like, "You're an idiot," So she wasn't happy. Some of my classmates that I knew, they just thought it was a bad idea because, again, like the whole scholarship, like, university is not super expensive in Canada.
No.
And so probably like a year, I was saving like $12,000. But as a student, that's, I guess, like a nice chunk of change. But actually, one professor in particular, when I said like I was going to leave, this economics professor, Professor Baich, shout out to him. He was super cool. He actually said, go out and explore the world and, do your thing. So he was supportive. And my brother was also supportive. So I'd say from a certain portion of people, definitely, they just did not understand it.
So of the things that you've accomplished since then, do you feel like actually having the degree would have held you back from doing it? I don't mean just in terms of timing, but in terms of like you would have seen some of the decisions that you made after that as less feasible because you would be thinking about them against like metrics that you learned in school versus just following your gut into what else you did.
Sure. I mean, A, Jim, that's a fantastic question. B, I do think so. I used to read a lot more than I do now. But I would say for myself, even with the degree, let's just say I could snap my fingers and for some reason it wouldn't affect my timeline of what I'd be able to accomplish. I don't think it would have affected what I tried to do. I would say the books that I read while I was in university and before, like I spoke about that book, Black Swan, which was like hugely influential. And actually what got me to my second choice of starting YouTube, I would not have stopped trying to do what I was going to do. And if anything, I would think some of that education, I just wouldn't find it applicable in the new world or new media that I would seek to later do.
Yeah.
Like I like there's so many variables that can go into what we do that I honestly don't think a traditional education for business, it could give you some framework, again, like accountant, absolutely. Like you got to keep books. You need to know about that. If you're not good with math, that's super useful. Same idea with a little bit of like statistical models when we're taking a look at maybe some of the research papers. If you're doing, you're trying to summarize some research papers when it comes to exercise, that could be useful. But the actual use in terms of starting up a business, nah.
It's programmed to make you be a mid-level manager in some company.
Thank you, Jim.
It is not programmed to teach you how to start a business as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I mean, there may be classes, there may be entrepreneurship classes now in certain universities, or maybe all of them. I don't know. But you're just programmed to learn how to interact with other departments and to a very small extent manage people, and then a very small percentage do the HR stuff right.
You said it way better than me. I think that's absolutely the case. You nailed it. Where you said it's setting you up basically to work comfortably in a corporation.
Yeah.
And the end job or end goal is maybe middle manager, right? Like in terms of the vision or visualizing your own business and setting that up. At least from the first 2 years that I saw it, there was nothing to do with that.
Having done a little research, there are definitely colleges and universities that offer entrepreneurship classes. There are also lists online and elsewhere of classes that some experts recommend for entrepreneurs to take. These lists typically include finance, accounting, economics, IT, management, which is both personnel and otherwise, and of course, marketing. In my opinion, if you can't do marketing, you're going to have a rough time as an entrepreneur. So that one's obviously a given. The other subject areas, you should at least know enough to be a good consumer if you have to outsource these services. And you should understand that each one of them has norms. And no matter how innovative you think your business is, you're not going to get around these functions or the need to work within at least most of the norms.
Some useful things that you certainly can apply. I think also, again, seeing the people where they were working and the jobs that they had and thinking to myself, do I really want this type of life? I needed just a little bit of breather to refocus what I wanted to do, because I did also have a lot of different passions I was interested in, and I was trying to figure out how to try and combine some of those passions into an actual job I'd want to do, and a job then that would be feasible for me to live off of. Yeah.
That makes sense. You got another one, Mike?
A bunch of that Omar just said popped in my head because like my stuff's so opposite.
Opposite.
Well, so I went to a similar path where I quit basketball in that junior college, ended up at another junior college, and working out on my own to go eventually plan to walk on or play somewhere. Played semi-pro basketball, and then I just quit everything. Ended up kind of doing nothing. Probably 3 months of nothing, literally. Like Mountain Dew and Xbox, just on my couch. And then I guess I was maybe the only tipping point in my head 3 months in. It might have been longer. I can't even remember. I'm 19, 20. Mm-hmm. 2 years of junior college, 15 years of all I thought about was basketball. Like Omar saying, like, I was thinking about what job would make me fulfilled, what job would make me enough money to make me live a happy life. That's still, even to this day, hasn't even crossed my mind. I've stumbled into everything I've done. And so, because I think my whole childhood, I never thought realistically. I literally, it was until I was 19, I still thought I was going to play professional basketball my entire life. Maybe not NBA, and I still think I potentially could have, but obviously that didn't happen. But I'd never thought ahead, I guess. Mm-hmm. I always thought now. Why aren't I now playing on so-and-so team? What do I have to do now to do this and that? I never thought about fulfillment because the only thing I knew or loved was basketball. And then it all just stopped. And I think at one point someone probably gave me a good talking to, mom or dad. Mm-hmm. Like, well, all right, no college, like bills to be paid. You better go work. Like you got a month to go do something.
Yeah.
Lucky for me, I had a really good community in high school and things. That was probably, I'm on the couch literally playing Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and just like, I'm that guy. All my friends are at school. They come back. They're still my best friends. I'd see them 1 week out of the year in Christmas or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm that kid that couldn't even make it through junior college that's literally just getting fat, playing video games every single day. Like Twitch might have been a thing then, but I didn't know about it. I wasn't creative enough to think about it. I was like, I'm playing video games. I'm not even good at them. I'm drinking full sugar kegs of Mountain Dew and freaking Monster. I got up to 230 pounds. Not good. 230. Like the worst kind of 230. I think I saw a picture. I should show you guys after this of me and my friend at a New Year's party, and my face, like, I'm like, whoa, I'm a freaking athlete. And I'm a fat Modern Warfare player. And then it's like, yeah, dad talking to me sitting on the couch playing video games, like, something's got to change. And so then I just started to find every job I could. And kind of, I guess I had an entrepreneurial spirit. That's the one thing that I could agree that our lives are a little similar there, where, you know, the first quote unquote company I started was DJing in 7th grade. Me and my buddy are like, hey man, like we organized a dance together for the school and paid a DJ. You know, we're working with the student council and this and that, and write the DJ a $2,000 check or something. And in 7th grade, we're like, what the fuck, $2,000? And he played crap music, bro. We're gonna be DJs. So we DJ'd for the next 7 years and made a good bit of cash. We washed detailed cars all summer because same thing. We got our driver's license, got our cars detailed. And I was like, I just paid that guy $100 to wash my car. It's like, I'm gonna wash cars, make $100 an hour. You know, we start crushing math. Like we could probably together wash 3 cars in an hour. That's $300. Like just crushing stuff. But still, I never thought about a job. I thought about quick cash because I was gonna go to the NBA. None of that mattered.
A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were talking to this guy. I don't remember exactly what the circumstance was that we met him, but he was talking about being a retired wedding DJ and how he'd never had Saturdays and Sundays to do anything with his wife because he was always working.
Yeah.
And I was really curious as to whether that was like the only job he had, because he had like a nice car and he was, you know, I mean,
I think you can make some pretty good money.
I maybe so. This guy was,
Yeah,
I mean,
don't know.
he was probably in his early 60s.
Yeah.
And had very recently retired.
I had no sense of money though. I don't know like what that guy made. Like you said, nice car, but like same thing. Like my dad had middle of the road job.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he made until I was like 23. I had no clue. I didn't know if 6 figures was good or 300,000 or $1 million.
Yeah.
All I knew was like NBA players make a lot of money, but I don't even care because I'm going to the NBA because I love basketball. And so then finally, got a bunch of jobs and started hustling.
So, okay, so the elephant in the room is, why'd you quit playing basketball?
I don't know, man. I think it was I think that the ongoing factor with me, even now, is probably a huge conflict between my ego and confidence in who I am and my extreme fear of failure. Like, there's days I wake up and I literally look in the mirror like, this world cannot fucking handle me. Like, whatever's happening, I'm going to dominate it. Like, this world better watch the fuck out. And then sometimes, not always, less now, because I think I've controlled all this, less now, I'm like, I'm not even going to attempt it. If I don't attempt it,
then you can't fail, yeah.
And school, I wasn't scared of failure. I hated it, so I just stopped. Basketball, I think at that point I was 22 and I was at the prime. I wasn't playing anymore. It was 2 years after that Modern Warfare moment. I got back into shape, working out, I don't even know, 2 hours in the gym, 4 hours a day basketball, played little semi-pro leagues, tip-top shape, perfect time to go and play in college. And then, just didn't want to pull the trigger, probably because I didn't want to go move away from home, very close to my parents. Emotionally, we were close, so I didn't want to move away, go to a school, try out, and get kicked off, or not make the team, or not be the star, and I don't know why that is, because truth is, I failed as a kid normally, but I was very successful because I worked really hard, and I was good at what I did. But there's always, and it's still now, there's always like, we just won't do that today. It doesn't matter, you know. And it's only certain things. Like, obviously, we all met through lifting. Lifting, that doesn't really bug me. I'm not going to not attempt a PR because I'm scared to miss. But it's just like certain things, I guess, where that confidence doesn't come into play. And then you know, the old adage of those that can't do teach. So I began coaching. And same thing though. I think I was a really good coach, really good at basketball theory, really good at communicating with people. And my mentor at that point was my high school basketball coach. I coached under him, and same thing. He kind of tried to push me away a little bit, and like, hey man, like you're pretty good at this. Like, why don't you go coach somewhere, like maybe college or whatever. And same thing probably crept into my head where, I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna. And I just avoided it.
Have you ever had something coming up that you needed to do that you felt like you would be really successful at, and you were afraid of the fallout of success?
Yeah, I don't know. You mean like a potential event or a game or
anything, even what you're doing now?
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Because some days I'll literally wake up and literally feel untouchable. And some people hearing this, that whether they know me or not, might be like, "Oh, that's a cocky thing to say." But like, I literally feel that. I'll literally just want to scream like, "You can't handle me." That's what my emotions are screaming, because I literally feel untouchable in anything. And then there's other days where, and maybe I control it now. Maybe that's the difference. And so the days I don't feel confident, I don't feel productive, and I just shut it down. And I go back to modern warfare mode.
So when you quit basketball that first time, I mean, and you were sitting on the couch, was there a point that you regretted quitting basketball? Or did you just like, no, I just needed to not do that anymore? And
yeah, I absolutely hate the word regret. And I know everyone, that's the cliche, I don't regret anything, YOLO. But yeah, I if there was another word for regret that wasn't looked at so negatively, I regret it to this day. Because I think my dream since I was 5, Omar was creeping on my Instagram. One of my early posts is me in a basketball. I have a backpack on. I don't even think I was in school yet. I'm dribbling a basketball around. I was probably in kindergarten or preschool. Up until I was, now, man, I want to be in the NBA. NBA, like, not that I don't love what I'm doing. I have great friends. I love making content. But I want to show the world that I don't want to be, I am that guy. Back in the day, I was pretty good at basketball. I'm that guy, and I fucking hated that guy. Yeah. I used to play and crush those guys in the gym every single day. Oh, you were good back then? F*** you, bro. I'm good now. And now I'm that guy. Oh, yeah, I used to dunk. Well, I was talking about the other day, Omar. We were just talking about literally in the lobby to somebody. I was like, yeah, I used to dunk. Like, I hate saying that because I could have played multiple places. But my ego wouldn't let me go play in, like, South America. I was made for the NBA. And that's going to sound so stupid. So, like, who's this powerlifting entrepreneurial podcast guy? But, like, no, like, that's truly destiny or whatever. That was me. I was going to the NBA.
I was thinking about this yesterday when I was on the plane, watching the people getting on, they're holding the C numbers, how late they were and all, getting into the plane and everything's cramped. And I was thinking about, this is kind of like the bell curve
of life.
Yeah, because the high performers are the people who figured out how to get an A.
Yeah.
An A card.
Optimize things.
And they figured out either they paid extra, which is what I did.
Yeah.
Or they're good on the clock.
Yeah.
And they checked in on time. And the people who are in the C's, either they don't give a about where they sit or any of that stuff, or they're just inept.
Yeah, lazy, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. And I realized that it's super judgmental.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, well, you can't have a plane that's just all A cards. You can't have a plane that's just A and B cards. You have to have A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Or you can't fill the plane.
Yeah.
And
that's the same thing, right? Like, not everybody's a lead singer.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to play the triangle, bro. We need a drummer. Yes. We need a bass player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And do you feel like, if not playing in the NBA but playing somebody somewhere that was important, like, if I don't know, I mean, if there was such a thing in the world as like constant charity basketball or something like that, where it was meaningful, or like some kind of like inner city outreach with basketball.
Yeah, you mean like right now?
Yeah. Or even or then or now, whatever. I mean,
I don't know. And even think, like, past that, everything else was me stumbling.
Yeah.
Just like, this is a stupid analogy I've talked about in the past, to the movie Yes Man by Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Like, it's a comedy, but he gets, a spell on him that he can only say yes. I watched that movie probably near that downtime of my life, and I was like, I just gotta say yeah. So I just started saying yeah, and like being like, I guess, more outgoing. I was like asking people for things, like, yeah, man, like, oh, you need help this one? All right. Like, oh, and I still do that. I still believe in that too. All three of us talk about it. So you never know who's listening. You never know who is going to affect who. You never know what's going to trickle effect. I don't know how to, and not just like sound depressed. I don't know how to find fulfillment now, because I think some of that is still so deep in me. I love what I do now. But nothing is like, this is what I meant to do. This is so amazing to me. Rather than like, this team is better than me. They're ranked first. I'm ranked fourth. And I just mentally and physically overcame your team and we won.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm at basketball camp, at a camp I'm not supposed to be at. Everyone's better than me, and I just won MVP at that camp. No one's ever heard of me. All these kids have played together their whole life or whatever. Those are the moments, at least in my childhood, that I remember true fulfillment in my body, in my mind, in my spirit, where now I love what I do. I love creating content. I love reaching and hopefully impacting people. But I stumbled blindly into all this. I learned along the way. That was conscious. Mm-hmm. But even now, I think now maybe because I'm old, like, oh, what am I going to do for 10 years, or how am I going to make money, or how am I going to live, and what's semi-fulfilling to me, what makes me happy daily, I guess. But like fulfilling this, chicken soup for the soul, I don't know.
From my own perspective, I think that I must live at the corner of where fear of failure meets fear of success, and just down the block from where that other thief of joy, imposter syndrome, lives. I can feel from Mike here, and the amateur psychologist in my head is noting that all of these probably lie along the sliding scale of self-esteem, something that seems to go up and down on a nearly daily basis, or a within-the-day basis for a lot of us. I don't perceive that Omar has any of these problems. I could be wrong. I didn't ask a specific question about that, but just listening to the way that he approaches life makes me think that it's not an issue for him.
Back to you, Omar. What you did after you left school, were you stumbling like what Mike said, or did you have some kind of a plan that developed over a period of time? Flip the question around, like, is what you're doing now what you planned?
It's part of the plan. And I would say I've always had a master plan in my head for quite some time. It's taken me longer to unveil it, and so I'd probably say I'm still in the early stages. But I'd say after I left the university, I had to figure out how to work and how to earn money. So, and I decided I'm naturally like a min-maxer, I call it. It's like a video game a reference, where basically I figure out, it just happens in my head kind of naturally, like how to maximize an opportunity and minimize the amount of effort that's required, not to do like a C level, but to get like an A level result. And so I realized quickly, just crunching some numbers once again, that being a personal trainer, you got to make basically your own schedule. Yeah, you have to accommodate individuals. But I worked already at the university doing that, and I knew from cold calling people that if you basically approached enough individuals, you'd get enough clients. And if you got enough clients, you'd be able to organize your time with the way that you wanted. And so I was very big on, doing things that kind of fit around what I wanted to do. And so I started working as a trainer. And I knew for some of my later goals that I had and still have, it basically would require capital and free time. So bit by bit, I started working as a trainer, worked my way up. And then from there, that's basically where the second major choice came in, YouTube, which is like kind of that choice that maybe didn't make sense to a lot of people when I first started it. Huge opportunity, but I always knew the end grand goal in mind. And so one of them actually is finally coming to fruition this year, where I wrote a screenplay for Hannibal Barca, which is like a figure from history, historical figure of the Second Punic War, a Carthaginian general. But now I'm finally adapting it into a graphic novel. And so we're going to pitch it to like Dark Horse, Image, and I have an artist. And that's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And there's a lot of different things like that. But I'm somebody that likes to control the means, the means of production. So if you we could talk about the music industry for a second, where if you take a look at artists are indebted to their companies that then promote them. And so basically it becomes a rat race where they control your music. They own your music. You don't own your own music. You have to appear at certain places at a certain time. So as an artist, as a musician, yeah, they might pay you a lot, but you're basically a glorified indentured laborer. And I would never want that situation, anything that I would choose to create. And so what's cool about the comic book industry, just to go off on a tangent, is that Image, for instance, they let you own the comic book that you create, and you get a revenue share split with them. I forget what it is. Like, let's say you own the character, and then you make 30% of the profits, and then they publish it or whatever. But you own the actual character, which to me is very important, which is why I'm going with that route when it comes to Hannibal. in order to do that, in order to have the free time to really make that happen, I knew I needed some sort of equity, a job, something that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed training. And then bit by bit, I just visualized in my head, thinking about how I can maximize the time that I was willing to work. So I started doing group coaching, started doing boot camps, so strength classes for women. I had a really good, I got to give him a shout out, Sean Smith, a client of mine, who was a CEO, and he basically imparted, when I talked about business lessons, he gave me a lot of business lessons, just me coaching him, because he kind of took a shining to me, and I learned more from him than I learned in a practical sense from going to school. Yeah, which kind of really cemented what I was thinking, and that was the first year of me being a trainer. But he talked about a glass ceiling, the concept that, and not the traditional way of viewing a glass ceiling, but trading dollars for hours as a personal trainer, you can only make so much, right? Yeah. Like, you only work 50 or 60 hours a week. And I actually, as a challenge to myself, I wanted to prove that I could work hard, because I quit university. And so I made it a point when I started working at Extreme Fitness, a big like chain in Toronto, to set like the record for the most amount of hours worked in a single month, which is an insane amount. It was like, it worked out to 62 training hours a week. Like in-person training people. Jesus Christ. Which works out to like, 10 hours a day.
So the question was not initiative. Yeah. You had plenty of initiative and plenty of drive.
Yeah. Yes. And Jim, that's a great point. I should say I never felt lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always felt, which is true, and I still feel that I don't have enough time for a lot of things that I want to accomplish.
I'm sure we've had a conversation before about how you got involved in YouTube, but like what are your stats right now? Like how many subscribers and all that kind of stuff?
So right now I have on YouTube 700,000, almost. It's like 690,000 subscribers on that, and then Instagram it's like a couple 100,000. But YouTube's like the bread and butter, and so I am proud of that statistic, because I think eventually within the next, I'd say 20 months I'll hit 1 million subscribers, and so. Unfortunately for YouTube, it's interesting. A lot of different niches have, a lot of growth potential. YouTube Fitness actually doesn't really. It's a small niche in the overall.
It really
YouTube.
is. Yeah. That's why everybody's trying to cross over out of it.
Yeah.
This seems as good a place as any to talk about the thing that brought us all together. That's right, YouTube. YouTube became self-aware on April 23rd, 2005. I mean to say that the first video was uploaded. I don't know that it's self-aware yet. I feel like that day is coming, though. Anyway, I joined less than a week before Google bought YouTube in November of 2006, and actually Omar joined in April of 2009. The total number of people who use YouTube, 1.3 billion with a B. 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every single minute. Almost 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube every single day, and YouTube gets over 300 million visitors per day. Before YouTube, there weren't a lot of options if you wanted to share your videos with other people. There were a few sites that let you send download links, or you could host them on your own website and people could stream them. You might be lucky enough to get your video picked up by some site that was showcasing it. In the lifting world, there was irongame.com, which was owned and run by a guy that I used to know at a powerlifting gym that I was driving more than an hour one way to get to. A lot of what was on that site were older lifts, classic feats of strength transferred from VHS tapes, Wide World of Sports back when it used to show powerlifting, I think some early World's Strongest Man. Iron Game eventually became popular enough that the hosting became too expensive for one dude to maintain. It was a different world. When YouTube showed up, it was just a video sharing app. It was not an advertising platform, not a personal branding vehicle. If you had told me that there was a chance that people would make any money, let alone build companies and personal wealth on a video sharing platform like YouTube back in the day when it started, I would not have believed you. And what if it had never been developed? The It's a Wonderful Life of YouTube would be an interesting mental exercise. Just for the three of us here, I may or may not have met Mike. It's possible that I would have. Neither one of us would have met Omar. I probably would have left powerlifting much sooner than I did due to just kind of injuries and lack of interest, and there would have been less of a point to shooting video if you really couldn't show it to anyone. Anyway, our lives would definitely have been different without the power of this particular platform.
Are there ways that you try to inspire your audience?
No.
No?
No, because I think that's contrived. And I've only ever tried to be myself.
Well, I guess maybe what do you communicate about yourself that you hope that people will find inspiring? I don't mean being inauthentic about it. I think because I don't think that works for very long. What are your own qualities that you recognize in yourself that you hope that people can pull from your videos?
I would say to first off, figure out really what you want to try and do when you enter a space. So I see a lot of people trying to be YouTubers or social media influencers, and they basically just try and copy what everyone else is trying to do. And so I think hopefully the biggest takeaway for someone observing the channel would be that you could do things your own way, in your own terms. In a niche too, especially, I have to highlight this, that let's say strength training or general fitness information was not popular when I started. YouTube fitness was basically completely full of bodybuilders talking about one specific topic. And so the thought of talking about strength training or anything outside of basically getting jacked was not popular. And so there wasn't that built-in audience. And I see basically what people try and do now, they observe who's successful and they try and mimic it, rather than, for me, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do what I like to talk about. Like my clients, the clients that I had, the majority that weren't online, they were all actually just, like females, because we kind of talked about this off camera. They're way better at following just instructions and a whole bunch of other things. And so that was my bread and butter. But what I wanted to talk about when it came to training and lifting wasn't quite that topic. And so hopefully what people take away is that you could do things your way. I think even if it's a small niche, like YouTube fitness is a small niche, and basically what we do, like strength training or talking about strength training or trying to enhance your performance, is an even smaller niche. You can still make it if you work hard enough. And that's something I maybe underplay, the amount of effort that it requires. Because I kind of believe, as a general rule of thumb, to an outside audience, you should never let them see you bleed, which means the amount of hours. Like people stress that way too much. Like, oh, hustle. Like I'm hustling every day. Like I'm grinding. And so I don't like to portray that image, because I think then you become too attached, too in love with the concept of the hustle rather than the outcome. I only work hard because I want the outcome that I see before me. I'm not just blindly putting in effort that leads to nowhere. I believe in putting in time to get an expected result.
But this is our 7th podcast in 24 hours. Hustle.
hustle. I'm right, and that's why I have it. Like this isn't even a joke. I think if you want something, and I've observed that with different people, and I have to give a huge shout out to my mom, who had an incredibly hard job, and then raised us and like took care of us, is that if you really want something, you'll put in the time and effort. Like I'm ready right after this podcast to record another episode of our podcast. Like no joke, and I'll do it. Yeah, like no problem.
You said that YouTube is really the bread and butter. Is it like your economic driver completely? Or
yeah, so not the ad revenue from YouTube. And this is a fun fact, I didn't even know you could earn money from YouTube, Jim. After my first 50 million views, I discovered that, which would be I basically lost out on about $100,000 in my first few years.
That's frightening.
Yeah, so I wasn't even depending on it. And so what's great, that liberated me, because I had to find other sources of income. So the carryover from everything that comes from YouTube, so the views, then people buy like our products, myself, Sound Like, our training products, apparel, a pre-workout that I had, all those things definitely come from YouTube. But YouTube itself doesn't pay me the majority of my income.
Ad revenue, yeah. I will tell you this, that I looked at mine yesterday, and my channel is like maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I'm at 25 million now.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's fantastic.
It took a long time.
It's a small niche, man. It's just people. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said people realize that YouTube fitness is so small, or fitness in general, right?
Yeah.
I think people like the concept of being fit, but not actually paying attention to what you need to do in order to get fit.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people have realized that, and so they incorporate lifestyle a lot into it. And that's where the second wave and social media on Instagram has really led, I think, to the second expansion of fitness, but it kind of puts the eye on the wrong prize.
There's two things I think that people have issues with when it comes to like fitness and niche, and also the economic factor. But in the niche factor is like, you can't be expert of a broad category, and you can't be the top of a broad category. There's no king of the world.
Right.
There's a president of the United States.
Yeah.
That's my bad, Jim.
We had some water hit the floor about right here. We're going to pick it back up in a second.
Okay, so Mike was saying something.
Sorry.
I was talking about, that you can't be an expert in a very broad category. And I know someone's going to argue that somewhere, but you get what I'm saying, where these people will hop into YouTube fitness, not see the growth or expansion that they want, and think, oh, well, that's because fitness is so small. I should be the makeup, fitness, cardio, lifestyle person. Then I'll grow. Like, no, the bigger the pool, the bigger the competition. Maybe you're just not growing. Why not become an expert in what you do?
Right.
Really grind away at your craft and become the best in this niche. And then maybe it's time to expand as people become more interested in what you do. Similar to, Omar and I have done YouTube. He's done it much longer than me, but I've been on YouTube in various ways for a long time also. And then we came together on a podcast because it seems like people have an interest in what we have to say. Don't know why, but they do. So then we decide to do that. And then same thing with, we get so many comments about how we train other people for 5 years on the internet, 10 years each individually in person. Then we release our programs because people are yelling at me. It's not it's not the reverse where, and economically is where I was going to go, where he was lucky enough to be naive not to make the YouTube money, but people are now like, oh, there's money to be made in YouTube and sponsorships. So they don't get creative or work enough to actually make money. All they do is work towards a sponsor. They're not working for money, or they're not even working towards a greater goal. They're working towards a sponsorship and YouTube money. Yeah. But that's not how it works. If you work hard at your craft or get creative as a coach or whatever it might be, these other things are opportunities that ease the way on towards where you're headed.
I think too at this point, and with YouTube fitness, as with a lot of stuff, if I don't think you can go forward just like straight fitness. I don't mean like makeup and fitness or whatever. I'm talking about you need the disruptive element, whatever the disruptive element is, to pair with that. Those are the things that become super successful. Yeah, I don't know what it is in fitness. Right. I couldn't tell you what it is. Maybe maybe an example would be like a Dan Bilzerian. That's a disrupt because it's like a rich guy who's fit and he hangs out with chicks and he, it's ultimate lifestyle, I guess. But that guy in another time, that guy would have been like the biggest playboy in the world, but there wouldn't have been any fitness about it. The only time you would ever see him without his shirt might be, sitting next to a pool at his mansion or whatever, So I mean, maybe that's the example of the disrupt in that space, and maybe there are more. I don't know what they are.
Yeah, I don't either, but I know that is simply another way to relate. Like Kevin Hart, I know he's already famous, but he's the comedian guy that does fitness, right? And so like now he's known almost as a fitness person, and that's obviously working backwards because he's extremely notable and famous. But I think I get what you're talking about.
Yeah. What one thing I would say is what I pride myself in, and I think Mike should as well, is I would call ourselves the ideological disruptors, which means we change the course of thought when it comes to fitness, and that's been something huge. So a few of the movements, the first would be flexible dieting, bringing that to kind of the mainstream, where before everybody was needlessly restrictive. So they're eating just like tilapia, brown rice, and chicken and broccoli, and they thought that's what they had to do. And so now that's become mainstream, where hey, you can actually eat, focus more on macronutrients, micronutrients, and you'll get in good shape. Same idea with strength training, where before, I remember I posted a video. I wasn't lifting a lot, but in 2011, I was deadlifting, and like all the bros were like, this is bad for your back. This doesn't build muscle. Like, what are you doing? And so shifting the thought that, squats are cool, like squats are fine. You want to grow your legs, squat, or like deadlift, or if you want to bench, maybe don't set up like that pure quasi bodybuilder from before. Well, I remember when I first started out that benching and not touching your chest was very common on YouTube. So what I'm maybe most proud of, one of the accomplishments we said, what's the takeaway, is that, good information or the correct information might not seem sexy at first, but you can make it also sexy.
I think Omar is making a fair point here about having informed a lot of people about flexible dieting, or if it fits your macros, IIFYM. While I'm not here to be the arbiter of who had the biggest impact on promoting it, it does remind me of a tweet that I read the other day from noted nutrition guy Alan Aragon. Basically, he said that acronym was a short response when people on the bodybuilding.com nutrition forum would ask about eating foods that are outside of the regular, typical, narrow bodybuilding diet used for cutting weight. And the example that he gave was whole eggs, which have more fat, versus eating just egg whites. And the response was, if it fits your macronutrient targets, then go for it. However, keep in mind the additional calories. Flash forward a couple of years of usage of that acronym, and let me read to you what he has to say about it. The unforeseen problem was that people who had no clue of its origin and intent turned IIFYM into the name of a diet that gave the green light to fulfilling your macronutrient targets with however much junk food you want. This has led many people to bashing IIFYM. As one of the concept's originators, it's been frustrating to watch this confusion unfold and persist. The purpose of this post is to clear things up, and hopefully I've accomplished that. And since I read that, I hope that I've accomplished that too by sharing that with you here.
Are there times that you wish you were not doing YouTube?
And then doing something else?
Or just like, say from an exposure standpoint?
Yeah.
Other times you're like, I feel like I have to put too much of myself into this, and I would rather peel back and not show so much?
No, I would say I'm actually really thankful because I've been fortunate in that I show exactly what I want. I keep my private life private, like in terms of any personal details, but also the amount of effort. Luckily, knock on wood, I've not jumped the shark yet, where people, that sometimes might happen where you put in so much effort and then whatever, maybe like you don't have the physique that everybody aspires to, or some sort of thing. There's some sort of downfall or controversy.
Or you just have too much content.
Yeah, and you have too much content, and it just, it's just something that after that there's a burnout. It hasn't reached that point yet, so I'd say I am grateful and I'm happy. And when I get messages of people where it's impacted their lives, I find it really motivational. It's kind of, I do think it kind of reminds me in ways like Mike was talking about, people getting into fitness now for the wrong reasons. Or seeing, this person has endorsement, I want that, or I want this lifestyle. But for me to stay in the game, the motivation is seeing that end outcome, the impact that it has on people. So if anything, do I regret being on YouTube or the time I've spent? No. And I'm glad, actually, I will say this, I'm glad it all turned out the way it did. If tomorrow it was to implode, let's just say like YouTube, it's just like it goes the way of MySpace, where it's no longer relevant. And for some reason, just all social media, I don't know, it all blows up. I would be totally,
social media apocalypse.
Yes, the ad apocalypse all across social media. It's called people put down their phones and start interacting like humans with each other. It's a crazy concept.
Yeah,
but
never happened.
I'd be thrilled with the impact that it's had and everything. Like I would be totally content.
You guys most, as I do, you guys must get a lot of personal messages from people who, changed the course of their life some way, or just felt better, or every once in a while you get somebody who is really depressed or suicide attempts. You get all that stuff. How much impact does that have on you guys?
It's hard for me to be honest. I think one thing I do have is pretty high EQ. My IQ is pretty mediocre, but my EQ is pretty good. I think I'm a pretty empathetic human. But sometimes it is hard for me to feel it because social media is so weird to me. And again, I feel I've stumbled into all this a little bit like Omar, like our stuff's so raw and it's just us. And that's how we built who we are and what we are. And that's why we continue to grow a little bit over time. Obviously him a lot longer and more than I in terms of social media and things. But our growth has not been peaked. It's not been forced. We don't lose followers because we're slightly higher body fat percentage or because we're weaker, because no one follows us for that. No one cares because they follow us for the information hopefully we teach, a little bit of entertainment that we teach. And I guess all that growth being so slow, we've grown with the social medias a little bit. And so it's still just maybe detached from my head. I appreciate it. Don't get that wrong, whoever's listening. I love hearing good feedback. That makes me feel warm. But I don't know if I feel it to its depths. And that's just being honest. I'm not going to sit here and hustle, raw, kill. I can't say that many of them, probably one or two, but I can't say many of them have like shook me, like I helped that guy out, because it is an email, like it's a guy's first name and an email. It's hard for me to feel, if in person's a little different, at expos or something, that I feel some guys have given me some chills, saying things like just nice things, even whether it's deep like depression or something, that's giving me real chills, or just everyone wants to be complimented, everyone wants to make an impact, and that I can make a positive one feels good. But some of the social media stuff is just so weird to me, because I stumbled into it, because it was a slow growth over 7 years ago. I decided I wanted to do that and grow it slowly, and I'm still not very big. It's like a slow growth. The impact can't be felt, I guess.
Let's wrap it up with this question. Actually, it's a two-part question. How far are you from feeling really successful? I mean, what would it take between where you are now, where you assess your level of success? What would it take for you to feel really successful?
Well, Jim, it's just like the Muddy Waters song. I just can't be satisfied. And it's just one of those things. I don't think I'll ever be satisfied. And I think that's part of the tick that makes me want to keep going. I like where I'm at. I know what I want to do in the future, and then I know what I want to do after that. And I always actually have that feeling of it taking longer than I want, even though I know it's a process. And so I think when we talk about a success, there'll never be that point of absolute contentment. There's contentment of being in the moment at this place, at this time. And I think it took me a while, because I didn't even realize what was going on when it came to YouTube with the growth during the major growth periods. But then when I stopped and realized, like, hey, I'm living off of this, or hey, this is actually, I've managed to stabilize this. Like, I'll be able to live off of this for a decent amount of time. Like, if it all just disappeared again tomorrow, like there's backup plans and a lot of other things. But I have kind of, I guess you call it the bootstrap mentality of an entrepreneur, what's always trying to grow things or build new, different things. And I think if I have to give a shout out to one David Lee Roth once again, where he talked about that concept, which I thought was great, about trying to approach his goal in his autobiography of, making it in the band with Van Halen, is sometimes you have to cut off all other possibilities and only have that one possibility of sink or swim to put you in that situation. So my mindset is always kind of on what's the next project, or what can I do to make this better, or the next thing, because I have a lot of things I'm passionate about, like how can I move on to this. So I think being in the process of creating is when I'm most content. So I'll never have that, one moment of success. There's not a finite thing. I think there's no real beginning and no real end. It's endless.
Mike?
I think this is the first year that I graduated, that I could even know what success, that I stepped into the arena, not the arena of accomplishing success, that I even stepped into this is the first year I'm playing.
Playing basketball, bro.
I'm balling. I think I just graduated school. I spent the last 10 years learning through doing, training, business, EQ, empathy, life. This was the first year that I could apply that to I haven't even taken my first step towards success. It was the first year that I could build the energy to take the first step, which hopefully comes in the future. I guess a little bit like Omar. Like, I think what drives me and my neurotic anxiety is that I'm not happy or satisfied. I talked about it once in a video, and I don't know how well I got my point across or how well I will now, is what I have these two things battling in my head daily, hourly, weekly at the least, of my ego and my fear of failure. And along that path, whoever's in control, there's never a time that I can say, that was good, awesome. I'm the worst at big things, maybe. 10 years ago, I could say, yeah, I was a good high school basketball player, but that doesn't matter. Like, I can't smell the roses. I can't be satisfied by a small victory. It's so cliche because of the industry we're in, like never satisfied, but that's truly, I wish I could be satisfied. Are you fucking kidding me? My anxiety would leave. My fear of failure would leave. My ego would probably chill out. If I could be happy, if I could make X amount of dollars, have this, that, weekends off and be happy, I would trade it. Because it's a little bit of a torturous unsatisfaction to get where we're going. And, the old distressed artist or whatever, or disturbed artist, maybe that is a little bit in me somewhere. But this is at least what helps me sleep at night, that is what leads to greatness. And, people talk about Michael Jordan being the greatest basketball player all the time, but he was a gambling alcoholic. We have these things that are coping mechanisms, or everyone has their own issues, or, he used to yell and punch teammates, like he wanted what's best and he was never satisfied, and he was great, at least in my eyes. So success, I wish I had an answer. I wish someone would give me an answer.
Yeah.
It would make things a lot easier in my head.
It's up to you, bro. That's the thing.
Yeah, and so for me, I guess, without being cliche again, but progress is all I can hope for.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because of the day and age we live in, all I can run that by is a couple standards, Did I laugh a little bit more than I cried? Did that ego take over a little bit more than that fear? Did I make maybe a little bit more money? Did I spend a little bit more time this year, this week, this month, this decade than I did last time with the ones I loved? Was there a purpose in the long run?
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, yeah, it's kind of head down, chin up, and keep pushing.
You do you.
Me do me.
So, any place you guys want to direct people?
Podcast world.
Back to this podcast, your podcast, buddy. I wish you, Jim, nothing but success
Thank you very much.
with the Less Than Obvious. I think it's a great title. I think it's a great concept.
I agree. Appreciate you having us, buddy. It's great to chat.
And you guys are Mama's Boys Podcast.
Yeah.
Mama's Boys Podcast.
Everywhere.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
mamasboyspodcast.com, iTunes, etc. And hopefully we continue doing it.
YouTube, yeah.
Who knows where we'll be.
It's exciting. That's what when we just talked about the idea of defining success. I think success is doing what you love, or what motivates you. When you have that feeling, I forget who described it. Either it could be like when people listen to music, it certainly happens to me. You get the hair rising on the back of your neck. When you just feel something in your gut, you have that feeling of either contentment or excitement at something that you're doing or creating. It's that process. And I love the process.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jim.
Can we crash here, Jim?
Yeah, totally.
We hate our hotel, bro. It's a
My thanks again to Omar and Mike for hanging out with me till nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. We were pretty pooped, but we had a good conversation. And shout out to their buddy Nigel, who hung out with us as well, and who recorded an episode of the Mama's Boys podcast with the three of us, which will be showing up at some point. So I had a great time talking to them on that one too. I apologize again for how long it's taken this episode to come out. Some things just can't be avoided. On the next episode of the Less Than Obvious podcast, I'm still on location in Columbus, Ohio, this time with Michael Fahey, director of West Side versus the World, the documentary that I and plenty of other people tried to talk him out of making. Luckily, he doesn't know how to quit.
And then I went to talk to my roommates, who I lived in a house with 4 other guys, and they were all involved in the industry. And a couple of them worked for major studios. And one of them worked in development. And I went and told him and was like, what do you think about this idea? And I'm expecting that they're going to kind of get it. Because I went and told one guy who was a former football player and rugby player and was doing MMA at the time and was working out himself. And I was like, what do you think? And he was like, no one's going to watch that. They all said, who does that? Who powerlifts?
You can find me on social media everywhere as at the Jim McD. The show is at Less Than Obvious everywhere but Twitter, where it's Less Than OBV. Great reviews and ratings are very much appreciated. Please take a minute to do that. And also, please tell a friend about this podcast if you're enjoying it. Remember that being nice doesn't cost you anything, but it can be worth a lot to somebody else. I'll talk to you next time. I want to take just a couple minutes to address something. Recent life experience has reinforced to me a few personal rules that everyone I think should have about assertiveness. Never let anyone take away your voice by speaking for you. Never let anyone change the terms of a deal without consulting you. Never let anyone act like your voice is less important in a conversation than everyone else's. It took a therapist to remind me of that last point, and to be honest, it hit me like a ton of bricks when I realized the extent to which I'd let it happen. If you don't have high self-esteem in the first place, and like me, it's easy to let yourself be run over and taken advantage of in all the ways that I just mentioned. And finally, when you do find your assertiveness, you might discover that you don't fit in the plans of those who were counting on you not finding it. I'm still getting asked a lot about things that happened with me this year, and rather than getting too far into the story on this show, I'd rather talk about lessons learned. The ones I just mentioned are very important. Here's another one. Get things in writing up front whenever you're going to work with anyone. That applies to both strangers and friends. If you can't get that going in, don't go in, even if it means you're not going to launch something awesome. Don't expect that things are just going to work out over time. Entropy is the way of the world. Things fall apart, not together. If you're a big fan of subtext, I'm not saying anything new here. Until next time.